Are you an accounting or tax professional who wants to stay ahead without spending a dime? Join thousands who trust insightful accountant and tax practice news to keep them informed and empowered. Get expert updates on QuickBooks, Xero, tax planning strategies, and workflow tips delivered straight to your inbox. Whether you're a solo bookkeeper, firm leader, or tax advisor, these newsletters are your shortcut to what's next in the profession. They're free, practical, and built for people like you. Visit insightfulaccountant.com and hit subscribe to start your smarter workflow today for free.
So Todd, I know you have your own polling questions. I'll kind of let you cue those, at whatever time you want to. That makes sense for you, and we'll pop those up throughout the presentation. But I'm excited to hear from you, and I'm excited to hear more about GKM. Do you want to kind of tell us a little bit about you and your background and about GKM and what it is that you do?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that, Christine. Thank you again for having GKM and myself on your discussion today, and appreciate everybody who's joining us. I know it's a busy time of the year, especially with extension season
You're
upon.
about to make it easier for us, though.
Yeah, well, this is true. It's a good segue. Todd Steinberg with GKM. A little background on me. I've been involved in the consulting industry, working exclusively with accountants since 1994. Started working with a consulting firm that helped accountants build their accounting practices, think sales and marketing tactics and techniques for tax and accounting professionals. So worked with thousands of clients during my career there. It was at that time, back around the late 1990s, hard to believe it's been 25 years now, that I met the founders of GKM, VG and Carthy, who were two of the nicest people that I've ever met. And I got to see firsthand what their firm, being at that time relatively newcomer in what was really a new space for outsourcing. It was somewhat of a newer concept at that time, 25 years ago, a little bit more taboo of a subject than it is today, as I think most accountants know. The big firms have been sending work through third-party resources overseas or domestically for years, and now it certainly has trickled down. I'm sure you have some attendees and guests on today's call that are outsourcing or have been, or maybe you're considering it. So regardless of where they may be in their process of evaluating outsourcing, it's certainly something that has been around now. It's here to stay. And having saw and seen, continue to see the impact that it's had, probably now more than ever, with the issues that I hear from my clients. We can't find good people. It's impossible to find good people. We can't retain good talent. Where do I find good talent? So while we're not suggesting that each and every one of your staff members be replaced or consider replacing them, but as you think about where the puck is going in the industry, I'm sure you talk about it with your members and guests, that we're becoming a more forward-looking profession, not just backwards-looking historians. And with that basic blocking and tackling of compliance, bookkeeping, tax work, payroll, et cetera, still being the meat and potatoes of a lot of firms, and a good portion of the revenue, how do we start to think about reinventing ourselves to be more valuable to our trusted clients? Well, for most firms, that starts with thinking about what type of change they need to make in their organization now, and what maybe they can shift to an organization like a GKM if they're having a hard time finding talent internally. So that's really what we do, is in working now with thousands of firms over the years. I think currently we have a base of well over 500 clients. We specialize in working with small to mid-sized accounting firms all across the country to kind of serve as their back office solution. So very excited, and I believe in what we're doing because I've seen it work with some of my clients. I should add that in addition to working with GKM, I'm also the founder and managing partner of Thrive Financial Group. We are a succession planning firm that helps accountants buy and sell practices all across the country. So when I look at it from that lens about making your practice more valuable, when ultimately it's time to sell, obviously profit margins and being able to scale and efficiencies and systems goes into valuations, and buyers are attracted to firms that have this type of model already in place, where They don't have to go in and start to recreate the wheel and reinvent processes. So from a valuation perspective, not only can it help you run your firm more efficiently and profitably currently, but when you are ready to cash in your chips, it can also help you command a higher multiple and ultimately raise the enterprise value of your practice. So
That's really interesting. I wouldn't have actually thought about it from that perspective, but it makes a lot of sense for sure. And we do talk a lot about, efficiencies, a lot from the technology perspective, but this is a really important conversation to be having. I can't tell you how many articles I write that are sort of like, talent is an issue, talent is an issue, talent's going to continue to be an issue, the talent issue is going to get worse. We have fewer and fewer people going to school to be accountants. We have fewer and fewer people who are getting licenses to be CPAs and EAs. And unfortunately for us, like tax isn't as sexy as some of the other things that you could even do with an account afford to offer somebody that has experience, $100+ a year. I have to figure out how do I efficiently, fill that hole.
yeah.
Um, what would you say to somebody like maybe they've been around the industry for a long time and it was one of those things that wasn't as popular? What would you say to that person who's like, I don't know, I think I need help, but I don't know whether or not I'm ready to pull the trigger?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And I actually do have, I don't know if it's something that I can launch. I have a little bit of a slide deck to maybe help kind of walk through a couple
Yeah,
of talking points. Am I good to share my screen?
yeah, you should be able to.
Let's see if I can do that here. You guys able to see that?
Yeah,
Okay.
perfect.
Well, it's funny because we didn't rehearse the question about fall activities and Halloween, but it kind of goes right into this little tagline here, which is outsourcing doesn't need to be so scary. And I think this kind of goes to your question of that many firms are afraid. I think it's behavioral change when it comes to we're accustomed to doing things a certain way, and it's hard to sort of shift from your processes and your systems. We all are creatures of habit, so
Mm,
it's tough. And many firm owners will literally turn new work away. How many accountants I hear all the time are telling me we can't take on new clients right now because we don't have the bandwidth or capacity to take on
yeah,
what we got. And that's a bad place to be, quite frankly.
it is.
So what a lot of our clients have found is that before they just open up the floodgates and give us all of their work, all of their bookkeeping, all their tax work, they'll dip their toe in the water. And what I mean when I say that is they'll give us a trial, whether that's processing a couple of first dummy returns before
Sure.
we actually introduce it to clients and just see how the flow works, see what the response time is, the accuracy, et cetera. Or on a bookkeeping engagement, they'll let us work on a couple of smaller clients. And then ultimately what starts to happen is over time, they get more confident, they get more comfortable, and they realize that maybe we should have been doing this a long time ago. And
Yeah.
ultimately they begin to provide us with more, if not all, of some of their compliance work so that we become really an extension of their firm. While yes, we're not equity partners together, but just like having a staff member work remotely from somewhere else across the country, which I hear all the time from firm owners that, today where not everybody's in the office in a brick and mortar environment, think of it the same way, where essentially we're logging into your software or your server, we're doing the work, and it's like in the middle of the night, because there is from India to the United States, at least most parts of the United States, it's a 10 to 12 hour time difference. I like to think that in the middle of the night, the little bookkeeping fairies will come in. They do all the work. And then when you get in the next day, voila, it's all done. So the turnaround
I love
time
that.
is very quick. And without getting into the weeds on our experience, we have top talent. I mean, this isn't something where you have to go back and redo what we've created or done. We want to get it done right the first time. So we have a very experienced team that makes sure that the product that we're pushing out is quality. So I would encourage anybody who's considering it to do their homework, talk to a couple different firms, talk to some accountants who are doing it currently, get their
Mm,
feedback, understand how they introduce it to their clients. That's always a concern. Talk about how the security measures work and what type of security procedures are in place. So those things are all extremely important. So I think with that, just to kind of keep us in a timely manner, we've got a couple polling questions. So let's go ahead and launch that first one if we can.
I'm going to just guess that the answer to this one is probably going to be a resounding yes.
Kind of a loaded question.
Yeah, and then I have a follow-up question after we have these two polling questions too. But yeah, this is, I mean, it's definitely something that we experience on a regular basis, and we're very, very lucky to have the team that we have, but it is not any sort of easy feat to make sure that
Well,
we're
and
staffed.
while you're waiting for people to respond here, I'll say also putting my succession planning firm owner hat on, many of the buyers that are acquiring practices through me are buying practices not only for the top line revenue, but in many cases for the human capital that comes along with the practice, because
Mhm.
finding good talent through an acquisition is a great way to acquire people they wouldn't have access to otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so 22% every single year, another 50% sometimes. So the bottom percentages are rarely and never. So we definitely a large majority are having some variation of staffing. Okay, and then I think we want to pull up the second polling question at the same time. So we'll give that one a second too. Have you ever considered outsourcing tax prep or bookkeeping? Great question. So I'm curious too, and we can give this one a few more seconds to let everybody answer and see what the results are. But I'm curious to hear a little bit more, Todd, about what makes GKM different from maybe some other of the outsourcing firms out there, or maybe someone's tried a different solution in the past and it wasn't the right fit. So can you tell us a little bit more about what makes GKM
Sure.
unique?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. So yes, there's a lot of options out there when it comes to outsourcing today. There's no question about that. It can be viewed as somewhat of a commodity. What I believe it really comes down to is track record, this client satisfaction. And I would not attach my name, my firm's name, and my clients when I was in the consulting firm helping accounting firms grow for many years. I would always say, if I'm going to ruin my reputation, I'll do that myself. I don't need another
I don't
organization
need
to do
help.
that for me. They don't need to help me ruin my own reputation. So we're very, very careful about the type of feedback and asking through surveys how satisfied clients were. I mentioned knowing the owners personally. When you work with good people over 20 plus years and you build relationships that, span beyond just business, but just knowing that their core values are in the right place based on their actions and not just their words. And that's been demonstrated to me time and time again. It's why I still do this many, many
Mhm.
years later, because I'm very passionate about what they do and how they can help the industry. And I've spoken with hundreds of clients that are also my clients that have just been delighted and thankful for having the opportunity to work with GKM. Now, let's face it, people want security. They want price sensitivity. So competitively, I would say they're very competitive in the marketplace. They have a great talent of people in the back office, which is in Chennai, India. We are a public accounting firm first, of well over several hundred people. We have CPAs, we have chartered accountants, which is the equivalent of a CPA in India.
Mhm.
So really just a dynamic team of people, and we're constantly hiring and training the best and brightest in the local university in which we are stationed very close by. So I think our track record of having been around for 25 years and having worked with over 400 clients says a lot about our longevity and ultimately the client experience that most firms experience when they work with somebody like us.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if I'm kind of skipping ahead in like your thought window of what you wanted to share, but can you like what does the workflow process look like? And I like from a practitioner standpoint, I'm like, okay, outsourcing sounds great. It's definitely going to help solve my talent issue, but am I have to build in a new system? Am I going to have to completely challenge sharing information? Am I going to have to review process? The workflow look like in terms of making it easy for someone like me to onboard this as part of my existing system?
Yeah, that's a great question, Christine. So it starts with a discovery call with our team. to find out where your pain points are or use help. Because we have over 400 clients across the country, not everyone's using the same tax software. Not
Right.
everyone has the same chart of accounts and systems and processes. So I'd say we're customizable. Yes, we want to have certain standards and protocols to follow, but whether you use, let's just say, for example, your firm uses ProSeries tax preparation software, the next firm uses UltraTax, and then let's say,
Yeah.
or CCH. So we have a team of people that are trained specifically on not only the US tax laws, but they're very familiar with that particular software package. So they're not bouncing around from one software to another to have to try to figure out how to navigate that.
Okay,
Um,
nice.
and so on the tax side, we base our pricing on slab rates. So complexity is going to drive the cost of the individual or business tax return. So the number of schedules, as an example, number of state returns, things along those lines. So we have a schedule that certainly we could share with anybody who has interest in understanding our pricing. But when I looked at it last, there's like 3 different slab rates. Let's just call it $75, $125, and maybe a few $100s. So $75 tax return for us might be one that you would charge an individual tax client here $500-$600. So
Sure.
a $300 1120S might be a $2,000 tax return to your client. So our fee structure is invisible to the client. In fact, we're never communicating directly with any clients. We're really become an extension of your firm and deal directly with you and your team. So from a preparation standpoint, your team's still signing off on the returns. We're just the preparers. It does go through a comprehensive review process before it ever goes back to your team. So the information exchange, we literally log into your software. If you're in the cloud, a lot of times people will give us their login credentials because we're in a different time. So we can do this when one might not be awake here in the United States. Or if we're really involved and we've got multiple people working on your firm's work, maybe you create a separate login and account for our team members. But it's really no different than a team member logging in from home that lives 10 minutes away from your physical office location. On the bookkeeping side, think of it, if a firm owner were to hire a new staff accountant or a bookkeeper, initially there's conversations that have to happen as we get familiar with services particular business clients, right? So setting up that chart of accounts, understanding how certain things are done with that client. But just like a new employee that starts after we've been working with that client and on that accounting or bookkeeping for a month or two, it starts to become more routine. So we ask for a little bit of that same grace as we get going, where we just have some regular meetings with our team and our managers to make sure we're all on the same page. So on the bookkeeping side, think of it more of a dedicated person, not versus like a team of people on the tax side. You're either going to have a part-time resource, or like many of our CPA firms here currently that we work with across the country, they have multiple full-time equivalents that are essentially extensions of their practice that are on our team and our payroll, but they're essentially part of their team and they work exclusively with those firms' clients, if that makes sense.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a different model than some of the other outsourcing options out there, which I really like. And communication is key too. I think that sometimes where, maybe somebody who's tried an outsourcing option in the past gets burned a little is that the communication isn't there. And so then
Yeah.
you get frustrated with things having to go back and forth, or, maybe you have
Sure.
you review points and it's just not getting, timely cleared up. So I think that's amazing. Now, how do you guys manage like the speed of turnaround time during tax season? Because obviously you get busy just like the rest of us. So does the turnaround time change at all during tax season, or how do you kind of manage those
Yeah,
expectations?
that's a great question, Christine. So first of all, we have a drop dead date of when you have to allocate tax returns to us, or we just simply can't service them. Because if we had everyone coming to us on February 1st and saying, I have
Yep.
1,000 tax clients, it would get a little overwhelming, needless to say. So we scale up in preparation for the work that our clients are going to give us. Now, we do have, I wouldn't say unlimited talent, but we have historically, year over year, been able to plan accordingly for the amount of work and talent that we need to have to be able to satisfy the requirements of our clients. So as long as we know that going in, we can prepare on our side for the volume that you plan to give us. So we do need to know that in advance. Our typical turnaround time, and we're very proud of this fact, is between 24 to 48 hours on a tax return.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So, I mean, if there's not a huge rush and, the client's expecting it to be longer, if it's not something that we need to have back, but in almost every case, we're able to turn that back around within a day or two max. Many times it's there 12 hours later once you send it to us. So I think that we've got another polling question here that let's try to squeeze this in. And then I did have a few other things I wanted to add to that.
Yeah, I would love to know the answer to this question. I'm curious what the biggest concern with outsourcing still is for people. I mean, I've talked about this a lot in webinars. I've done articles on this, not just on outsourcing, but forming different partner relationships. The industry is not what it was 20 years ago, especially post COVID and with technology. You have so many firms who are building remote practices to expand their talent pool, and this is just the step that goes in that direction and makes great sense.
You're really dying a slow death if you're not doing this. The
100%.
smaller firms are doing this in droves now. Again, I'm talking to people who are buying practices all day long, the aggregators, the consolidators. And once they've got a little bit of scale, this is almost like a must do. And in many cases, they're building their own teams overseas in the Philippines or India or wherever they may be, versus even just considering using a third party, which personally I think is a much more effective way to do it when you're a small to mid-sized firm, unless you want to go,
Yeah.
set this all up yourself, which by all means, go do that. But this is a great option. And I think the perception from clients has just changed. It's
Hmm.
how do I position this to my clients? And, this is somewhat reflected in the loss of client control or relationship, data security and compliance. People are concerned. I mean, the compliance piece of it is something that, of course, we have to take very, very seriously when you got social security numbers and very confidential information going overseas. You have to make sure that you have the latest standards. So, I can speak to that here in a moment as well, to make sure that we know these are the concerns and the objections that people
Right.
have. So we're prepared for those. And I believe we have solutions. It's not for everybody, but I think the majority of small to mid-sized firms out there now would really benefit from being able to buy some of their time back by
Hmm.
now getting some of the basic blocking and tackling compliance work off their plate so that they really can focus on the higher value advisory services, or like I said earlier, maybe just take on new clients that you've been turning away because you just haven't been able to service them.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm so glad that you just said that too, because I do talk a lot about needing to build in that those value-based services for the firms. Like realistically, there's a lot of compliance work that's going to not look the same over the next 5 to 10 years. And the value that we're providing our clients are things around, strategy. And we need the time to be able to spend on that. And so this is a great solution to be able to create that capacity.
You can't go to a conference and not hear about how the puck is moving in that direction of
Yep.
advisory services. And people have been banging that drum now for several years. And it's really hard to steal second base when your foot is still on first. So how do you make that leap to being a more forward-looking advisor when you're up to your eyeballs during tax time? And
Right.
I talk to firm owners all the time, and they want to begin to reinvent themselves, but it's really hard to do that. And whether that's advisory or wealth management or some of the other services that trusted advisors as accountants that we're sort of looked upon now to be in many cases, or at least what some of your competitors are starting to become as an accountant, at least in my lens, that's kind of where we're moving, is to become
Hmm.
more of the relevant advisor versus just the compliance shop. That's really where your competition is positioning themselves. So how are you going to keep up with that, is I think a question that we all need to ask ourselves.
Yep, absolutely. So we have about 5 to 10 more minutes, and then I'll open it up for any questions that anybody hasn't asked yet. But I know that you have a few more things that you want to make sure that you talk about.
Yeah, I did want to just talk about security. I mean, it was evident from the polling questions that that's a concern, right? So we go through a very strict third-party evaluation process on a regular basis to make sure that all of our security standards are as modernized as possible. So essentially today, without getting into all the technical speak, it's about as secure as logging into your bank account online. So 128-bit encryption, knock on wood, no security breaches. Our back office in India, we have keystroke monitoring software. There's no ability for somebody to put a flash drive in and take information. They're only as good as what their eyes can see. And everybody, of course, is background checked. And so we've got a great team. And we again have not had any issues on the security front in the 25 years that we've been in existence. So we can do more than just the tax prep. We also have experience in audits. We have experience in compliance support. So we really can tailor a package and a program to your firm's specific needs. So, anybody who is open to exploring how GKM's service offerings could benefit from them, I would just strongly encourage them to, well, I think we talked about some of these components here, but I wanted to put this up here with our website, and if that little QR code works, they can scan and that'll take them directly to our website. So yeah, so that's pretty much what I had to cover. I think the security piece of it is a big concern. And I would just say that, as you approach your clients with this, and that's sometimes a conversation that people are afraid to have, like, how do I tell my clients I'm sending their stuff overseas? So we have, I'll say, wordsmithing that you can use, proper ways to introduce this to your clients. And it's my experience, having helped several hundred firms implement this outsourcing into their practice, that 95% of clients are okay with it if they know that ultimately you're still the main communication point.
Yes.
That you're still the one signing off on the return. They're really not communicating with the end client. It's just now you've got an extension in your practice to help with some of the basics of the bookkeeping and tax prep, to free you up to spend more time consulting and advising your clients. I think most people see that as a real positive. And when you tell them that it helps control costs in a world where fees for everything are increasing, most people don't want to see their accounting and tax fees increase. And this is one way to at least protect that from going up any more than maybe what it would need to otherwise. So, and if someone says, no, I want this made in the USA, I don't want, then those are clients that you keep and don't send these to a
Sure.
like GKM. And if that's 5 or 10% of your client base, I'd be surprised if it was even that high. So I would pause there.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to make a couple of comments on the security. I think that, I mean, first of all, you talked at the beginning, this company has such a long track record, right? Like, you have a long track record, a great reputation. And so that's something that I would normally tell people, hey, you want to ask that question if you're considering an outsourcing partner, is how long have you been doing this? What is the reputation like? What are your clients saying about you? And what you're saying is, hey, GKM has positives on all of these fronts. And that really speaks volumes to what you're doing in the background. If you were not keeping your clients' data secure, that would be something that you wouldn't have all of these positive results from. And also, everybody brings up security and data compliance as their number one concern. Although, frankly, I think that it's the number one concern of any small practice, because our budgets are limited and very few of us are paying for these very expensive security systems in our own practices as they are now. I would even venture a guess that probably the security that GKM has in place is more advanced than what some of these small practices have in place for themselves.
I would not be surprised.
Awesome. So let's just see if anybody has any questions that they want to ask Todd. Please feel free to pop it into the Q&A. We'll pull up the final poll, but I'll keep my eyes on the question and answer tab. So feel free to pop in any questions and we'll get those answered for you. And we'll bring up that final polling question as well. While we're doing the final polling question, Todd, if someone wanted more information or they were interested in talking to GKM about, how do I get started? How do I send you some dummy returns? How do I see how this works? What's the best next step for them?
Yeah, I would say in the chat box, put the word call and we can have one of our representatives reach out to you. That's probably the most direct way. If you want
Perfect.
to visit our website, GKM Tax, that's a good place to start also, where you can learn a little bit more about our team, our services, and then we'd be happy to set up a demo and kind of walk you through, learn a little bit more about your firm and walk you through some of the services that could be a benefit to you and your practice. And it's always just good to have this information in a worst case scenario. It might not be a need today, but
Mm,
as I have seen many times, you're on
yeah.
one tax manager quitting away from needing to call GKM pretty quick.
That's actually
So
a great follow-up question. How fast can you onboard if that actually happened to us, not our manager, thank God, but we had a tax preparer that had to go in the middle of tax season last year. How quickly can GKM onboard if we needed help that fast?
it depends on the time of the year, right? So
Okay,
if we're in the middle of tax season and you come with that, we may not be able to help you. It really
fair.
just depends on our current capacity at that particular time. If it's anytime outside tax season and we have time to plan and prepare and allocate resources, then I would say always call, but
Yeah.
can't promise you anything February, March, and April.
That seems fair. We do have a question from Jennifer. She wants to know, do the bookkeepers work the same way as the tax prep? Do they log into the firm's current software?
Yes, they do. So the one thing that we recommend that the CPA have would be a high-speed scanner, which most do these days, to be able to provide all the source documents and put them into the system so that when we go in to start working on the bookkeeping engagement, we've got everything there. And if we do have questions, we'll take little notes or assumptions and send those back. Primarily the communication is via email with our team as far as the go back and forth is concerned. Hopefully that's minimized, especially as we get going. But we do want to have regular interval check-ins just to make sure that everybody's moving along smoothly and efficiently. But we would use QuickBooks or whatever you may be using, Xero, whatever some
Yeah.
of the programs are today. So that's something we can kind of walk you through. And depending on how you've got it set up, we can certainly work. Today I don't think we have a situation where a client's called us and said, can you use this software? And they're like, have you ever heard of this one before? I've said, well, we actually have a few clients that use that. So we're pretty proficient with pretty much every program you could think of, Bill.com, Canopy, you name it.
That's impressive. I was going to say we have Bill.com on later this afternoon. So if you're someone who doesn't use a high-speed scanner on a regular basis, we can talk about what some other solutions are. I love it when our clients are using Bill. It makes our lives so much easier, and it sounds like it makes GKM a nice plug-and-play piece at
Definitely.
the same time.
There are some
Awesome.
best practices for sure. Yes.
Awesome. What is your go-to survival fuel during tax season? So I'm curious to see what the results of this poll are. Was caffeine one of the polling options? We're going to try to make it easier for everybody this year. That's the goal. That's the goal. All right, we'll see what the responses are on these polling questions. Just a reminder that if you're trying to get your CPE, make sure that you're answering this final polling question for us. Coffee. See, the pure adrenaline is one of my favorites. I'm glad we've got 0% on energy drinks. So for all of my fellow coffee lovers, I think that it's probably a good time to. So I guess quick follow-up question also, is now a good time to be reaching out? Like, do we have enough time between now and busy season kicking off to start onboarding if we're interested in working with GKM?
Yeah, I think this is a prime time. I mean, start thinking about now what tax season is going to look like.
Yeah.
Any tax season, since we're in that currently, I would say we're still open for business now from a tax perspective. And yeah, bookkeeping taxes. I mean, that is really our sweet spot for small to medium sized practices. Don't think you're too small. Don't think you're too big. We
Mm,
work with firms in all different shapes and sizes and locations. So I'd say reach out, have a discovery call. Let us prove our value by providing you with at least a bit of a teaser or a demo, and then you can form your own opinion. But if I'm you, I'm asking to speak to references and referrals, but
mm-hmm.
25 years in the business and hundreds of satisfied customers, third-party endorsements, I think that says a lot about the organization. So it's a solution, it's an offering. Again, it's not for everybody, but I think for many firms out there, it could be a much needed part of your firm's plan moving forward to really allow you to grow and run your firm more profitably.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, this is going to be rapid fire to close us out. This is the final question. Todd, if you had to sum up the benefit that GKM provides to its customers in just 2 points, what would those 2 points be?
I would say profitability today, enterprise value tomorrow.
Oh, I love it. Tell them to use that as the tagline going forward.
That's a good one, right?
It is a good one.
And
It
it's
is a good one.
true.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time. This has been an awesome presentation. Okay, so thank you guys all for hanging in with us. I know that it was a long afternoon full of lots and lots of information, but hopefully you got some great benefits out of it. And we will see you on our next event. Have a great afternoon.